all of us are going to develop a disease at some point.
Aging is a disease, right?
Aging is a disease. Our body is a machine, and we are beginning to discover why we age. How do you slow it down? How do you stop it? Maybe how do you reverse it?
I think you gotta have a dream.
The School of Greatness.
Really?
Yeah.
Please welcome Lewis Howes.
If we add 30 healthy years, so you've got the cognition, you're thinking clearly, the aesthetics, you look good, the mobility, you're moving well. If you add 30 healthy years, science is not standing still during those 30 years, right? It's moving, and the speed is accelerating. So, a lot of the work right now is around the idea of slowing, stopping, and reversing aging. There are species on this planet, from the bowhead whale to the Greenland shark to sea turtles, that live 200, 300, 400, 500 years. If they can, why can't we?
Interesting. 500 years.
Yeah. Greenland shark, at a minimum, does 400 to 500 years.
Come on, really?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It is incredible.
So with CRISPR, and I've just started learning about CRISPR in the last few months. For those that have never heard about it, can you explain what it is, and how can you use something like CRISPR to, I guess, take genes from the shark that lives 400 years or whatever, and help us humans use it in a way to help us live longer?
CRISPR is an editing technology that's been discovered out of bacteria, and it's evolved over billions of years as a means by which bacteria prevent themselves from being infected by viruses. There are things called bacteriophage that infect bacteria. And anyway, Jennifer Doudna and her partner, who won the Nobel Prize in 2020 in chemistry for discovering CRISPR, learned how to manipulate it and utilize it. And some folks at Harvard, like George Church and others, turning it into a tool that allows you to go into your genome and accurately change letters. So each of us, you and I, have 3.2 billion letters in our genome, 3.2 from our mother and 3.2 from our father. And those genes basically are your software, right? And sometimes you might be born with a genetic disease, a mutation, like sickle cell anemia, thalassemia. There's thousands of them. And you're stuck with it. And it could be fatal, or it could be inconvenient. And medicine has over the years tried to just, how do we treat it? How do we remove the symptomology, but you still have it?
You still have it.
And CRISPR is an opportunity to go into your genome and make the edit and cure you, right? C-U-R-E, cure. And for example, there's CRISPR trials going on right now to cure people with AIDS, where you go in, right, the HIV virus has been integrated into your genome, can use CRISPR to go in there and cut it out.
And delete it.
Right? This is like
crazy.
This is word processing for the letters of your body. So That's probably we're not going to probably use CRISPR for longevity, but it's going to help us live our longest, healthiest life, and then we're going to learn how to make changes that will extend it. One of the big areas, and we're also beginning to learn how to grow extra organs, like a backup set of kidney, lung, heart, thymus, pancreas, and that's pretty cool to have a backup set of organs for yourself.
Right. So you can do the surgery if you need to. What would you do? Print it?
Well, there's a few different approaches. One, Martine Rothblatt, who's an incredible entrepreneur, what Martine has done is gone after pigs, and turns out pigs have the same size heart, liver, lung, kidney as humans do, and modified the surface antigens and removed the viruses and making them compatible for transplant. So you can make an infinite supply of humanized pigs that are then available instead of, because right now, what do we wait for someone to die in an automobile accident.
And then we use that organ, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think the first transplant happened with a pig heart within the last 6 months.
Yeah, so there was a liver transplant that was done into someone who was brain dead, but the family allowed the transplant to take place as a first step. And then there was a heart transplant that was done about 3 or 4 months ago. Now the patient only survived for a little over a month, but it's the first step.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But maybe if there's a way that CRISPR could change the DNA of the heart first and then transplant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that is, it's the early days, but I think it begins to change the way we think about what's possible in our lives. Like, what would you do if you had an extra 50 years? If if you knew you were going to make it to 150, would it change when you have kids, whether you get married, how many careers you have, how long you work, your desire to go and see another star system? How does it change? Because life is precious. There's no question about it. But this idea that you are going to retire and then go out to pasture and give up on life, I think is bullshit. I think if you feel good, if you've got the energy, if you're thinking clearly, the only time more exciting than today is tomorrow.
Right. What would you do if you had an extra 50 years? If you knew, okay, if I stay healthy and there's no accidents in my life and I know my body could take it to 150.
Listen, I love starting companies. I'm on my 25th or 26th company right now. There's a few adventures on the planet, a few parts of the planet I haven't seen yet that I'd love to go to. I definitely want to go and walk on the moon and walk on Mars and go start a colony in probably in the asteroid belt. It's like open up the space frontier and just see the future. My kids are 11, so I had kids when
You're 49?
49, 50. And they've got incredible life ahead of them, right? So kids born today could have an indefinite lifespan.
Really?
We'll see. It's like we're beginning to understand why we age and why we may not need to. And it changes a lot of things, right? Including Social Security and government operations and the institutions of marriage and all kinds of things. Would you go and have a third, fourth, fifth family? Who knows?
Interesting. What are the main causes of why we age?
Your genome at birth, 3.2 billion letters that your software code you're running, and at age 20 and 40 and 60 and 80 and 100 is the same. Small mutations, but roughly is the same. And so the question is, why don't you look the same?
Right. Why is that?
Why is it? Well, it's not the genes you have. It's what's called your epigenome. It is epi from the Greek word above, which means what genes are turned on and what genes are turned off. And so as we get older, the body goes into dysregulation. It was never designed to live past age 30.
Really?
So, yeah, because 100,000 years ago, think about this. You would go into puberty at age 13, no birth control, you'd be pregnant by 14. And then by the time you were 28, your kids were having kids.
That's crazy.
Right? And back then, before we had abundant food, before Whole Foods and McDonald's was around, the last thing you wanted to do to perpetuate the species was steal food from your grandchildren's mouths. And so there was never benefit, right, for being the old member of the tribe who's strong-arming for food or holding the tribe back. And so there was no selective pressures against a person living longer or promoting a person living longer. So we never did. And so the body goes into a rapid dysregulation. For example, when we're born, we have this large supply of stem cells in our body. As we age from like birth to into your 40s and 50s, the stem cells in your body can fall 1,000-fold. So there's something called stem cell exhaustion. That's one of multiple causes. Your mitochondria, your power sources for your cells. So recently, Tony Robbins and I wrote a book called Life Force, and it hit #1 in the New York Times for like the first 3 weeks. Was out. Super proud.
It's an amazing book. Yeah.
Yeah, and the book looks at all of the breakthroughs today that are have just come out, have been out for a bit, and then the ones that are coming out, and for treating cardiovascular disease, cancer, neurodegenerative disease, Alzheimer's, for increasing your vitality and your strength. And what I can tell you is that the speed of innovation is breathtaking.
Wow.
Right, is breathtaking. And part of that is understanding why we age. There's a great another book called Lifespan. So Tony and I wrote Life Force, a guy named David Sinclair wrote
great, yeah.
Lifespan. Are you familiar?
Yeah, I've had David on a few times.
Fantastic. So David's brilliant, and he does an incredible job of explaining why we age, and his work in the sirtuin systems. These are the 7 genes and factors that control your epigenome and also control repairing mutations in the genome. So the good news is, what was used to be a crazy idea, I mean, people would laugh at you and you wouldn't get funding if you were talking about the idea of longevity research or age reversal, is now become mainstream. It's the hottest subject. Arguably tens of billions of dollars are flowing in per year.
Wow.
Into research, yeah.
If you're, I just turned 39, so I'm going to be 40 next year. If you're me,
yeah,
what were the things you say you need to start thinking about doing or applying ASAP that are free or pretty inexpensive right now? And then what are the things that, if you got the funds, like these 3 things you got to invest in now,
so,
like yesterday?
Great question. So, number 1, it's still the basics, right? It's
eat well, sleep well.
It's 8 hours of sleep, and I've got my Oura ring, and I actually, when I was in medical school, used to pride myself on getting by with 5 or 5.5 hours of sleep, right? It was like the manly thing to do. Now
I think Tony was like that for a long time too, right?
He has been, and I think he's finally got religion as we wrote this book. But I pride myself on 8 hours of sleep now. I really am shooting for that. I'm getting in bed by 9:30 because my eyes pop open at 5:30. So if I want to get that sleep, that's what I got to do. It's like bringing the temperature down, wearing an eye mask, a cooling blanket, all those things. And they're tricks and trades. There's a great book by Matt Walker called Why We Sleep.
Yeah, he's great.
Which is brilliant.
Yeah, we've had him on too. He's great.
So sleep is critical. Minimizing sugar. I mean, sugar is, in moderation, is fine, but sugar is an inflammatory molecule. It causes neuroinflammation, cardiovascular disease. It's not a good thing. I tend towards a plant-based diet. I tend towards minimizing any kind of red meat. I'm mostly fish and Mediterranean diet. And then exercise is key, right? So as much exercise as I can get, I'll squeeze it in there. So those are the basics, and there's a whole slew of supplements. If you have the money and it's not too early for you to do this, I started a company called Fountain Life, and Fountain Life is in the book in detail. We have facilities in New York, in Pittsburgh, in Florida. We're opening soon in Dallas, in Santa Monica here, and it's a annual membership, and you go and we do a digital upload of you. It's the best I can describe it. We do a full body MRI, brain MRI, brain vasculature, and what we're looking for there is finding cancer at the very beginning, at stage 0, right? And also finding any kind of aneurysms. And so 2% of people who come through have a cancer they don't know about.
Come on.
That's crazy, right? 2.5% have an aneurysm they don't know about. All right, an aneurysm is a opening in the arterial vessel. If you've had someone die in their sleep, a lot of times it's from an aneurysm that bursts. And then we do an AI-enabled, what's called a Clearly CT. And so historically, you'd go and you'd get your calcium score. And if you had a lot of calcium, that was considered bad. But calcified plaque in your coronary arteries is stable. It's the soft plaque you need to be worried about that can rupture and then block, one of the coronary arteries. And we use an AI-enabled CT called Clearly, CLEERLY, to find soft plaque.
Okay.
And then we monitor that for you. And then we do a GRAIL test, which is a blood test that can find 50 different cancers. We do all of your omics, your gut, your genomics, everything.
How long does this take to do all these tests?
It's 5 hours.
Total.
To
Is it painful?
do all the imaging. No, not at all. Not at all.
You just have to be patient and sit there.
And then we do a quarterly follow-up, and you get a concierge doc with you.
Interesting.
But the idea is, listen, all of us are going to develop a disease at some point, right?
Well, they're saying death is a disease, right? I mean,
Yeah, exactly. And so, but
Aging is a disease,
Aging
right?
is a disease. But you're going to, God willing, you don't, but a cancer, a neurodegenerative, you want to find something at the very beginning when you can zap it. And
And
so,
if you find it at the beginning, there's ways to reverse them?
yes, there are. Listen, your chance, if you discover any of these things early enough on, there are from cardiovascular and cancer and neurodegenerative and all of these things. Yes, you want to find it in the beginning. And people go, well, I don't want to know. Bullshit. You want to know as early as you can so you can take action.
Was there anything that you found that was,
So
that you're
I
nervous
found,
about?
so my biggest risk is cardiovascular, heart disease. My father, I think, pretty much passed from implications of cardiovascular disease. And I have reversed the cardiovascular disease that I've had with a series of medical protocols.
Interesting.
And that makes me feel much more empowered, right? And so monitoring then my muscle and my bone density and everything else. But knowledge is power. And if you want to live a long and healthy life, you want to know as much as you can going into this.
Is this something you do every year then?
I do every year, yes. I've done it. We have a facility, we have a sister company called Human Longevity, HLI, in San Diego. And so I had been going to the one in San Diego for the first 5-6 years, and then last 2 years I've been going to this new company that...
In Santa Monica?
Well, it's nationwide,
Okay.
but called Fountain Life. You can go to fountainlife.com. Santa Monica will open by the end of this year.
I'm going to have to check that out.
You should. And I think if you can afford it, and it's not cheap, it's $19,500 for the first year and then $14,500 for every year thereafter, but it includes a concierge doc and includes all of the workup, and it's a fiduciary for your health, right? Now the cool thing we're doing on top of that, which I love, is we're reinventing health insurance. So I think, and we have something called Fountain Health, which is our insurance program for, it's for self-insured companies right now, but we'll go beyond that. So, think about this. Life insurance pays you after you're dead, right? Health insurance pays you after you've been sick. Fire insurance pays you after your house burns down. And that's just like pathetic. And so what we're doing with Fountain Health is when you get this health insurance, all of the testing I mentioned before is free. And so our job is to test you annually.
Interesting.
And catch the disease at the beginning and prevent it from happening.
So I pay for the health insurance. I get the testing from Fountain Life for free.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's
So it helps you prevent and not have to spend.
It's all about preventative. It's personalized, preventative, predictive healthcare.
You mentioned, you lose is it stem cells. I think you said you lose after a period of time.
So the other side of Fountain Life is we have therapeutics.
Okay.
And there are a whole slew. In fact, my meeting right after our conversation is going to meet with one of my physicians. I've got an army of them to look at what therapeutics I want to do this year.
Okay.
And so there's things called senolytic medicines. So it turns out your cells in your body replicate on the order of 50 times. And at the end of 50 replications, they should die. Make room for new cells. Unfortunately, sometimes they don't die and they become cancers, or they can stick around in what they're called a zombie cell or a senile cell. And these cells are sitting there just pumping out inflammatory. Wow. And about 2% of the cells in your body are these zombie senile cells. And so there are medicines you can take that can target those and kill them. And those are called senolytic medicines. And so there's things like dasatinib, quercetin, and rapamycin. And then there are exosomes and stem cell treatments. Now, what we're working on, because today you can get your own stem cells. You can go to your bone marrow or your blood and separate out stem cells, concentrate them, and give them back. But you can bank them or give them back to yourself. Or you can go and get stem cells from the placenta of a newborn. And we are working to get approvals in the U.S. from the FDA under what's called an investigational new drug application to do that. Because right now, we at Fountain Life will make recommendations for facilities in the Caribbean or in Costa Rica or Panama
yeah.
or other places where you can go, but you can't get newborn stem cells legally in the United States because they've not been FDA approved.
Right.
Our goal is do the science, demonstrate what's possible, and get the FDA approval so that we can rejuvenate ourselves.
Have you done stem cell work on yourself?
I've done some stem cell work. I'm looking at for sort of the decade ahead. I've done exosomes,
What's that?
which are legal. So when a newborn stem cell is sitting there and it's producing growth factors, those growth factors are not just pumped out, they are put into these small vacuoles, like a piece of cellular membrane from the stem cell that has the growth factors in them, and then they're released. And so they have no DNA, they have no organelles, they're basically the messaging factors. And you can separate those out from the placenta, the newborn placenta, and provide those as, so you're getting the therapeutic output of the stem cell without getting the cells themselves.
Right. What is there anything other advanced things that you've done for yourself already, with injections or pulling out blood or anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm on testosterone optimization right now. So
is that the pellets or is that like an
no,
injection?
it's an injection twice a week that I do.
You look pretty jacked.
I feel
strong.
Strong like ox. Smell like ox too. But I've not done growth hormone yet. I'm looking at that. I'm looking at something called total plasma exchange. So this is like changing your oil, where you'll pull out a few liters of blood, you'll separate out the red cells and the white cells, and then the rest of the plasma is typically some saline and albumin, which is the major protein, and you can replace those, and you are sort of refreshing your blood supply. So there was you probably remember this, a whole bunch of conversation around the idea of young blood. Remember that?
Yeah.
There were these parabiosis experiments that when my business partners, Bob Hariri, Dr. Hariri, who's the CEO of Singularity, did years ago, in which you took an old mouse and a young mouse and you connected the circulatory systems. And the old mouse got young and the young mouse got old. And I was like, what's going on? This is interesting. And so there are a few different things. There's a company that has identified one factor called GDF11, growth factor 11, and is manufacturing that right now.
Interesting.
My venture fund's an investor in that. And it falls off as we age. And so the question is giving it as we age going to be part of that young blood experiment? But what they also did was they took the old mouse and they took out the blood and replaced it with this total plasma exchange, and the mouse got younger too.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of different factors. I mean, we're in the early part of this adventure, right? There's this concept called longevity escape velocity, and that Aubrey de Grey and Ray Kurzweil talk about, which is today, for every year you're alive, science is extending your life for about a quarter of a year.
Yeah, wow.
But there's going to be a point at which for every year you're alive, science extends your life for greater than a year, right, from all the breakthroughs that are occurring. So what is that? When is that going to happen? Ray Kurzweil's prediction was 12 years from now. And then I asked another friend, George Church, he's one of the most brilliant scientists on the planet, genomicist at Harvard. And his answer shocked me. He said 15 years from now. So our mission is not to die from something stupid in the interim.
Right.
All right?
Yeah.
And so we talk about a lot of this in Life Force. And it's really about how do you maintain vitality, the energy, the desire, right? Because people retire when they're not feeling well, when they don't have the energy anymore, they're not excited about life. And then there's a whole bunch of supplements I take, as like a laundry list of supplements. and
resveratrol
resveratrol and NMN.
Everything from Sinclair. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of others. And at the end of the day, our body is a machine, and we are beginning to discover why we age. How do you slow it down? How do you stop it? Maybe how do you reverse it?
How important is love, purpose, and inner peace in extending our lifespan?
Yeah, I think they're extraordinary. I think mindset, I talk about food, exercise, sleep, and then mindset is fundamental. I think love and companionship and purpose, you've all heard the stories of, the couple that is deeply in love and one dies and the one dies shortly thereafter, right? I mean, I think you can will yourself to death. And of course, our founding fathers, this country, I forget which two of them, died within hours of the 50th anniversary of the founding of the country.
Wow.
Right? They were like, I'm going to make it to that point. I'm going to make it there, right? And so having a purpose, and this is something that is really deeply meaningful for me right now. And I'm spending a lot of time on this. I had an experience, I co-founded something called Singularity University with Ray Kurzweil. And did that now almost 15 years ago. And we have executive programs and graduate programs, and Abundance 360, my program, is the year-round highest level version of Singularity University. And the graduate programs, we'd get 100 graduate students from around the world, top of their class, the best in AI and robotics and medicine, whatever it might be. And I remember every year I would ask a question: how many of you are clear about your purpose in life? And shockingly,
not many would respond.
Less than half the class. And I expected 90% there, right? And it
These
was
are the brightest of the bright.
Yeah. And they're just, from the top universities and entrepreneurs. And so it would be like 40% would raise their hand. And I'm like, holy shit. Listen, for everybody who doesn't know, your mission in this program is to find your passion and purpose. That's all. I don't care what you build as a company. Find your passion and purpose, because it drives everything. There's a great Mark Twain quote. He says, there are two important days in your life: the day you were born and the day you found out why. And so I'm on a mission right now to help people find their passion and purpose. And so I just launched, it's a free 30-day program called Mindset Bootcamp. And if you go to diamandis.com/mindset, you sign up. It's a 30-day sequence of emails that will hopefully change the way you see your life and your world, and help you find your passion, find your purpose, but then give you insights into the mindsets that will enable you to fulfill your passion and your purpose.
What happens if we don't find our passion or our purpose?
I think you're on a meandering walk, and you can still enjoy yourself, but I think it's really at the end of your life, looking back. And by the way, your passion, your purpose can be your family. And that can be just 100%, and it can be fulfilling in that. It can be, to go and open the space frontier. It can be to go right a wrong. It's like, a lot of this, and I talk about this in the Mindset Bootcamp, a lot of this comes from emotional energy. We're emotional beings.
Yes.
Right? We need that emotional energy to do anything big and bold in the world. And that emotional energy can come from awe and excitement. So for me, I was born in the 60s, and it was the Apollo program and Star Trek, right? Apollo showed me, what we could do, and Star Trek was that visionary documentary that showed us where we were going. And that lit me on fire, and everything I've ever done is a result of that passion, that purpose. And that's a positive passion and purpose. People who've been wronged in their life, whatever it might have been, it's like, I refuse to let that happen again. I will not let that happen to another person. And that can fuel your passion and purpose.
Right.
And I think it just makes every day more meaningful. It's
Yes.
like waking up in the morning and moving the needle, making a dent in the universe. And here's the important thing for folks who have not found their passion and purpose. It's easier than ever before. The tools you have to do something big and bold in the world are greater than any time ever in human history. Access to more capital, more knowledge, more compute, more connected people on the planet. And so I don't care if you're 80 years old beginning your journey, or if you're 8. It's like finding a purpose-driven life, I think, is a really important element. So, you know, my boot camp is part of that equation. And then for me, it's really helping people find the mindset. So I deal a lot with entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And one of my favorite questions for them is, okay, give me your favorite entrepreneurs. Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, you know, whatever your list is. Or your favorite leaders on the planet, Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, whatever it is. And I said to you, what made them succeed? Was it the cash they had in the bank? Was it the technology they had access to, or was it their mindset? And I think, I know you'd agree. Yeah, mindset's everything, right?
Of course.
And so whether it's the greatness mindset, gratitude mindset, abundance, exponential, longevity, moonshot mindset. Because if you took away their money and you took away their relationships and you took away their technology, if they maintained their mindset, they'd get back a lot of what they lost. Maybe they'd go even further. And so if that's true, what mindset do you have? You know, I ask them, what mindset do you have? And where did you get it from? Did you just like happen to inherit it? Did you get it from your mom, your dad, your school, your brother, your sister? Where was it? And I think that we should be more actively choosing the mindset we desire and then shaping the mindset. So, I mean, we both are knowledgeable about, you know, AI and machine learning, that it's really incredibly, it's rising monumentally. And when you think about machine learning, what machine learning is as a form, one of the areas of AI, is you're showing a computer neural net image after image after image, data point after data point after data point, and you're training that neural net to recognize cats or dogs or the English language, whatever the case might be. Our brains are neural nets. And what we see, what we listen to, who we hang out with, all of that is training our neural net. So I like to say, if you're watching CNN for 2 or 3 hours a day, and I call CNN the crisis news network or the constantly negative news network, you're going to feel like you're under attack, like the world is ending, and your mindset's going to be a very negative mindset.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, it's like, don't do that. Just
Turn it
don't.
off. Yeah.
I mean, and so I'm on, you know, I haven't watched any network news. I will get up in the morning, I'll do 2 things. I will spend about 10 minutes on Google News, right? And just look at what's going on
headlines,
to make sure there's nothing in the world I need to know about. Also, my mom will call me and tell me this thing I need to know about. And the other is I built an engine called FutureScope. And you might actually like this. So FutureScope as an engine allows you to build customized news feeds for yourself.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I built 2. One's called Future Loop. And so what I did was I gave FutureScope the AI engine there, all of my blogs, my books, my Twitter stream, and it modeled the way I think. And then it searches the world's news every day and brings the news to me that has positive semantic about converging exponentials impacting the industries I'm interested in. So if you go to futureloop.com, you'll get 15 articles every day selected by Virtual Peter on longevity, on space, on reinventing transportation, reinventing health, reinventing retail. And I use GPT-3, which is one of the AI engines out of OpenAI. And it's like, this is the news I care about. This is the stuff in the world that I want shaping my neural net.
Sure.
And then I created another one called longevityinsider.org.
Okay.
And I love it. LongevityInsider.org. It scrapes everything on Twitter, all the science journals, all the news journals. And I get 15 updates every day on breakthroughs in longevity and
cool.
vitality and health. And the engine picks the photo, the AI engine picks a photo, and it writes a very understandable summary of the article. So you don't need to have any medical background. It's like, oh, that's fascinating. And for me, that's part of our longevity mindset. If you believe that you have the potential to add 30 healthy years on your life, you're going to change. You're going to treat your life much differently than if you don't.
Yeah.
If you think, you're going to be dead at 70, 75, you're going to give up on life. If you think you've got an extra, you're doing 120 in a healthy way, then you're going to be, looking at starting your next company, getting your next boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever the case might be.
If someone is stuck in a negative mindset, but they want to lean more into a purpose-driven mindset, what are some of the steps they can take? Because this is a conditioning that some people have for decades.
It is. And you can, the beautiful thing about the human brain is it's plastic. In the term of plasticity, it's changeable. And you just need to do that rewiring. And there are a number of different things you can do. It's, what are you reading?
Yeah.
What are you watching? Who are you hanging out with? Right? I mean, just think about it for yourself. Would you rather hang out with someone who is like a positive mindset, there's no problem I can't fix, or someone who's reading the obituaries and just like, it's not to say that there are times in our life when there's something going on in the world that we need to pay attention to because we have the ability to make a difference. But I don't need to be bombarded by it every day.
Right.
Because it doesn't make me a happier person or a more active person. I think it's, again, what are you letting in? What posters are on your wall? I'll never forget when I was in medical school. I was starting my first university called the International Space University. My co-founder, Todd Hawley, I think as a joke and really just to goad me, put on his wall Murphy's Law, which is if anything can go wrong, it will. Right?
Things start going wrong.
It's like just really offensive. And so I had a whiteboard behind me. I went to my whiteboard and I wrote, if anything can go wrong, fix it, to hell with Murphy. And I wrote Peter's Law over it. And then I have Google Peter's Laws, there are like 32 of them now. When given a choice, take both, start at the top and work your way up. Do it by the book, but be the author.
Oh, that's cool.
The best way to predict the future is create it yourself. And it's the truisms that I live my life by. So what's on your walls, right? Who are your most positive-minded, optimistic friends? Spend more time with them. If you want to get thin or in good shape, hang out with people who are thin and in good shape. I mean, these are just fundamentals. And then, that's a lot of part of the element that I talk about in my Mindset Bootcamp. The other part is giving people the data. So a few of the mindsets that I focus on, an abundance mindset. Let's talk about that a second. So what's an abundance mindset? An abundance mindset is the belief that there is nothing truly scarce. So we grew up as a human species in scarcity. And our physiology and the way our brain is wired for scarcity. And so an abundance mindset, I'll give you two simple examples and go into more detail here. If I have an orange tree, I'm 5'5", I grab the oranges from the lowest hanging branches, all of a sudden oranges are scarce again until I invent a piece of technology called a ladder that gives me higher reach. And now I've got access to oranges again. If you've got a pie and you've got, a family of 4 coming over for dinner, but then all your neighbors hear about it and they all come for dinner, you have to slice the pie into thinner and thinner slices. In an abundance mindset, it's like, bullshit, we're going to go bake more pies. Right? So the realization is technology is turning whatever used to be scarce into abundance. Another great example. We used to go kill whales on the ocean to get whale oil to light our nights, right? Then we ravaged mountainsides to get coal. Then we drilled kilometers into the ocean ground to get oil. And now we're living on a planet that has 8,000 times more energy from the sun than we consume as a species in a year. 8,000 times. 2022 is the first year that we'll have more electricity added to the grid from solar than any other form. And so we're heading towards a squanderable abundance of energy, right? Fusion is coming down the line. And anyway, so the realization is there is nothing truly scarce.
Does your mindset ever play tricks on you and go into scarcity, go into victim, go into...
Of course, I'm human. I mean, and that's the default code. And so I get myself out of it. Like what's bugging me? And meditation in the morning is a great way to do that. You know, an exponential mindset is we evolved in a local and linear world. Nothing changed, right? The life of your great-great-great-great-grandparents and the life of your great-great-great-great-grandchildren was the same, right? Over millennia. That was it. But today we're living in a world where technology is growing exponentially. Things are not changing century to century or decade to decade. They're changing year to year. And so an exponential mindset is understanding how computation, sensors, networks, AI, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology, augmented, virtual reality, Web3, how all these technologies are transforming what each of us can do in our lives. You know, when I teach that to entrepreneurs, it's really important to think about that. A longevity mindset we talked about.
The moonshot?
A moonshot mindset is around the idea that the majority of the world is happy with 10%, right? The majority of the world is like, if I could get 10% more revenue or 10% lower costs, that's awesome. But we're living in a world today where you can go not 10% better, but 10 times better. We see this in our epic entrepreneurs. Astro Teller, who's the head of moonshots at Alphabet, gives a great example. He says, listen, if you're running a car company and you want to go from 50 miles per gallon to 55 miles per gallon, you could probably do that by lightweighting the materials, maybe making your aerodynamic a little bit more, changing the tires or a little efficiency. But if I ask you to go from 50 miles per gallon to 500 miles per gallon, you need to start with a clean sheet of paper and reinvent what you're doing. And when you think about what Bezos did with Amazon, what Larry and Sergey did with Google, what Elon's done with Tesla and SpaceX, those are starting with clean sheets of paper and reinventing the model. So we all can think about our moonshots. It's like, where do you want to go 10 times bigger when the rest of the world is happy with 10%?
How does someone start reinventing 10 times bigger over 10%?
So again, I have a week worth of lessons on moonshot thinking in here. Part of it is realizing that the way it currently is done is not necessarily the only way to do it. And it's first principles thinking. An example I give in the blogs are when Elon went to go do Tesla, the batteries didn't exist. And he said...
They didn't exist.
Well, the batteries at the price and the energy densities didn't exist to do this. And so he said, okay, well, how much should they cost? And then going and looking at the spot price for lithium and boron and the materials inside the batteries, realized that it can be, you know, an order of magnitude cheaper, but he'd need to do that, right? So just the way things are right now isn't the way they need to be. He did the same thing with reusable rockets. And so you've got to be clear about your purpose. What I talk about is you need to know what your massive transformative purpose is. What is that thing that you connect with in your heart and soul that is like, you're not going to give up? So for me, my MTP early on was space. It was Apollo and Star Trek got me going. And I wanted to become an astronaut so badly. I went to medical school, half to make my parents happy, other half because if I wasn't a fighter pilot, physicians were the next likely. And when I learned about my chance of becoming a NASA astronaut, like 1 in 1,000, I mean, really, like very slim, I said, okay, I have to reinvent how to do this. And so...
And you went to MIT and Harvard, and you were top of everything.
I was top of the schools. I read a book called The Spirit of St. Louis one day that Lindbergh flew from New York to Paris, not on a whim, but to win a $25,000 prize. And as a result of that, I said, I'm going to create a prize for private spaceflight. And so my moonshot became opening up the private space frontier.
Wow.
And we did that. We had a $10 million Ansari XPRIZE for spaceflight. We changed the rules and regulations. Virgin Galactic basically bought the rights to the winning technology. I've known Bezos for 40 years. That XPRIZE sparked him, Elon. And so we lit the fuse on commercial spaceflight.
Wow.
And that was my moonshot. My moonshot now is age reversal. How do I reverse human age by decades?
Wow.
Because I want to go to the moon. I want to go to Mars. I want to go and see another star system.
If you could predict the exact day that you'll walk on the moon, what year?
2030 to 2032, that time frame. It's expensive still. Starship will bring it down. I was just over at SpaceX with the commercial spaceflight team there, and they're selling tickets to orbit, and they're going to be selling
for like $250,000 or something, right? Or
I know. Well, that's on a suborbital flight. Orbit's $50 million right now.
$50 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's something called the cislunar orbit, like Apollo 8, where you launch from the Earth, and then you go out around the moon and come back.
That's kind of cool.
That's cool. Yeah.
How much does that cost?
That's going to be on Starship, and that'll be again $50 million.
$50 million to go around. How long does it take to get to the moon?
It's like 3 days there and 3 days back. Yeah, so it's like
So it's a week trip.
Yeah.
To go around the moon.
Go around the moon,
But not land on the moon.
Not land. And so that's attractive as an idea. Right?
When would that happen?
A couple years.
People are going to go around the moon in a couple of years.
Yeah, there is a Japanese client who's already purchased the first Starship mission to do that.
That's crazy.
And he's it's great. It's that crazy. It's great.
So you think in 10 years, 8 to 10 years, you'll walk on the moon?
I think that's a good objective for me. And the question is, will I do a cislunar? I took a few companies public last year. I'm going to wait for their stock price to go up.
If you let's say you had to do this in 5 years, you had to walk on the moon in 5 years. You had to. Like, yes. It was, or your life was over.
Okay. Yeah.
What would need to happen from you to shift the mindset to accelerate this in half the time?
Elon is moving as fast as humanly possible. There's no question. I mean, the guy is brilliant off the charts. There's a great Joseph Campbell quote where someone is driven as a man whose hair is on fire seeks water. Right. I love that image, right? It's like, where is it now? I gotta go. And so on SpaceX, and I've been there throughout his entire journey from roughly 2000, 2001, when he sold PayPal to eBay, to building SpaceX. And what he's doing, he'll spend every penny he's got to make the human race a multi-planet species.
Wow.
And Starship, I remember I was with him one day back, I don't know, it was 8 years ago, and he was really bummed. And I was like, what's up? And he goes, we just figured out that the Falcon 9 vehicle is not going to get us to Mars. It's not going to fulfill the mission. It's all about getting the human race to Mars. And we're going to have to scrap that and do something new. And he made that decision, and Starship came out of that, right? So Starship is 10 times bigger. It's able to carry 100 people to orbit.
Wow.
It's able to, it's completely reusable, not just the first stage. It can land on the moon. It can land on Mars. And we'll be seeing it going to orbit this year. And that's the vehicle.
That's incredible.
It's humanity's first real Starship.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Not going to the stars, but interplanetary ship.
That'll go to the moon.
Land on the moon, go to Mars. Yeah, it's designed and built to colonize. It can take 12 people to the Martian surface.
When will it go to the moon?
2025.
Wow.
3 years from now.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible. So I don't think there's anything I can do other than maybe throw a little more money his way, but he's got it. I think he's got that.
I'm curious about your ability to enroll. I'm a big believer that life is about enrollment.
Yeah, completely.
Enrolling yourself in your vision, enrolling others in your vision, enrolling communities, the world in a mission, whatever it might be. When did you learn the skill set the mindset of enrollment.
Yes, that's a really
For your life. And
Yeah.
also, again, you work with some of the most successful or influential people on the planet, whether they be the richest people in the world or influential people like Tony Robbins and Elon Musk and Bezos. You're working with them. You're in collaboration. You're enrolling them to give you hundreds of millions of dollars in ideas or businesses or moonshots.
Yeah.
How have you developed that enrollment mindset?
That's a great question. No one ever asked me that. And I think it's really important for any entrepreneur, period, or a mother or a father, right? So I became driven by my desire to go to space. Right.
When was this?
Well,
As a kid.
it was at 9 years old. Apollo 11, 12 is going on.
Yes.
I'm 8, 9 years old, and Apollo catches my excitement, and I'm like, going to be a doctor, make my family happy, but I'm really going to become an astronaut, make myself happy. And I get to college, and I'm at MIT as an undergrad, and I'm beginning to realize that becoming a government astronaut isn't necessarily the way I'm going to do this. And for some reason, I became enamored with creating a national and then an international space organization. It's out there now, whatever that is, 40-odd years later. It's called Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, SEDS, and it's chapters around the world, throughout the United States. And I start this on the MIT campus, and Bezos is the president of the Princeton chapter, and a number of my friends are presidents.
Did you guys go to school at the same time?
Roughly. He was a couple years behind me.
Did you know him in college?
Through SEDS, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
So at MIT, I find there's no space organization, no student space group. And I'm like, interesting. I'll start one. And I found myself in starting that organization, getting all the skills I've used in life.
To enroll people, you need to
enroll people to get up in stage and present your ideas and be able to organize people and to raise money. And it's like, it was like, do I remember anything from my aerospace engineering or molecular biology courses at MIT? No, but I remember the stuff I did in the evenings, right? So it's like, school is about all the places that you challenge yourself and put yourself. And so SEDS was an incredible educational experience. And enrolling people, whether you're getting to work for you, work with you, fund you. And people love supporting people who are both passionate, right? Finding that purpose and passion. And when someone's lit on fire. And it's like, I want to help you because I like your spirit, right? That's that kind of mindset.
Right.
The other part of enrollment is the data, is showing people the reality of here's the information. This is why this is possible. This is what happens if this is true. So it really is the heart and the mind, right? You need to get them cognitively so they understand it, and they understand whether it's getting them to put money from their investment hat or their philanthropic hat, and their heart, because people want to make the world a better place. I believe in the positive nature of a human.
So is this a different conversation for each individual based on who they are, how they think, how they're wired?
It is.
So if you're calling, let's just give me an example. If you're going to call Tony for something, or you're to call Elon for something, would you have a different approach on enrollment?
For sure.
And what's the intention you set before you do the meeting, the phone call, the FaceTime, whatever it is, before you say, hey, I got this idea, I'd love to tell you about it. What's the intention internally?
Not bullshitting the person, it's coming across authentically. I think it is being clear about what my role in involvement, I think this is critically important. I put my money, I put my reputation on this. Also, it's not being attached to the outcome.
Whether they say yes or no.
Yeah, because you can drive with passion, but one of the lessons I learned when I was at running SEDS, I was trying to get a place called Draper Labs to donate money to publish my newsletters and mail them to all the SEDS chapters. And I go in there and I'm meeting with the head of Draper Labs, and at the end is like we're a nonprofit, we can't donate money and so forth. And I was really bummed because I'd really set this expectation I was going to succeed. And I'm walking out the door and I stopped myself and I said, is there any chance you could do the printing for us and the mailing for us? And he goes, absolutely. And so it was realizing that any meeting you go into, you should walk away with something. Even if it is a clear critique of your idea or advice as to who might want to do this or a request for an introduction.
Or come back to me with these, this, and
yes,
this.
Exactly.
And I'll take another look or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Or can I just at least take this bottle of water for free? You know, can I get something?
Or this
School of Greatness mug. Yeah.
School of Greatness mug.
Yeah, can I get something out of this? That's fascinating. So you learned at MIT the power of enrolling.
A lot of enrolling, and there is not taking no for an answer when dealing with the bureaucracy. Like one of my companies I started years ago is a company called Zero G. We do weightless parabolic flights, right? I wanted to go on NASA's airplane. They wouldn't let me. So I said, screw it, I'll start my own. And I went to the FAA and said, I want to take back then it was 727, take the airplane and seats out, put padding in, put 30 people in the back, take the airplane, go up at 50 degrees and do this parabolic arc. And they were like, you want to do what? You're insane. There's no way that you can do this. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not going to let these guys stop me. And I said, you're either going to retire or die before I give up.
Wow.
It took me 11 years
to convince them
to get the FAA to approve it. It was an amazing woman, Marion Blakey, who was the head of the FAA, the administrator. I finally had to go all the way to the top to get that approval, and we did. And we've been operating now. You know, you can the website's go0g.com. I just took 60 people up on 2 flights. Took Pharrell.
That's cool. Pharrell went up there.
Yeah.
That's cool.
If it isn't your purpose,
you're going to give up on it.
You're going to give up on it. It's like this stuff. I've started companies just to make money. It's like, it's empty. No, not my purpose. This is what I'm doing.
Right.
This is what I'm focused on, right?
Yeah, and sometimes your enrollment may be, how long are you willing to show up and say you care about this? It took you 11 years.
Yeah.
You had to keep showing up and reinventing your ask and meeting different people and building your own credibility and your proven results and showing what's possible, that where they finally said, okay, let's do it.
Yeah. I mean, right now, I've got a few moonshots. One is around helping millions of people find their purpose in life, right? And it's like, how do I scale that? Because I think a person who's turned on to their passion and purpose is going to make the world a better place. I just think that's
happier,
healthier, taking more shots on goal, going after more moonshots, and I think that's a way of making the world better. The other moonshot I'm focused on is age reversal. So I've got either going to be $100 million or 2,000 Bitcoin XPRIZE for reversing the biological age of a person 20 years.
What does that mean?
So you have a chronological age, right? So I'm chronologically 60. You can measure a person's biological age. So biologically, last time I was tested, I was 49 and a half. Mentally, I'm like 28, or sometimes I'm 8. But
biologically, you're 49 and a half.
Yeah,
is what your
that's what the testing did.
That's through testing what blood and
it's testing what's called your epigenetic clock. It's looking at the methylation pattern, which controls your epigenome, what genes are on or what genes are off. My goal is a therapeutic, something you'll do to your body. It could be stem cells, could be gene therapies, it could be CRISPR. Who knows? I don't need to know the answer. That within a year of treatment, it could be a day of treatment, a month of treatment, but we're allowing up to a year, that we can reliably reverse your age, your biological age, 20 years.
That's crazy.
All right, and then at least 20 years. And then can you repeat that, right? Can you repeat that? So
that's amazing.
David Sinclair and George Church are both co-chairs of the advisory board for this, and
kind of the judges, essentially, right?
Yeah, helping design the prize, right? And then they may compete, in which case they would be the judges, but making sure the prize rules are set. And we have an amazing group. And I've raised I've kicked in money for this. I've raised about 70 million thus far.
Wow.
But I want to get it to at least, in fact, the principal donor right now, a guy named Chip Wilson, who was the founder of Lululemon, the first CEO, he said, I want to make it bigger than Elon's $100 million carbon prize. So he wants it to be 101 million. So he's put in 51 million. He put in half that.
That's amazing. What's the most you've raised, whether it be for your venture fund or business or XPRIZE?
I mean, each one is different. I mean, last year, in January of last year, I reached out to Elon and talked to him about doing a carbon removal prize. And to his credit, he agreed pretty much on the spot. And so
that was 100 million, right?
100 million, and then operating capital for the XPRIZE to run it, some additional couple of tens of million. And then the venture fund, Bold Capital Partners, we raised 400, and we're raising another 100 to close out the round, so it'll be a $500 million round.
Wow. What's the difference between enrolling someone in $1 million or $100 million? Which one's easier for you?
Well, listen, it's the number. The people who can contribute $100 million is more rarefied than people who can contribute $1 million, for sure. One of the things I get angry about is that there are a multitude of people out there who've got billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions, and WTF, what are they doing with their money? I mean, there are very few people who are really taking full-on shots. You know, Elon is. There are a few others, but it's like, you can't take it with you, and if you leave it to your kids, you can destroy their lives.
Right.
So, like, it's like, there are and I've gotten to know a number of people, and I'm like, guys, take some big shots on goal. Mm-hmm. It's like, there's so many incredible things to go after, and it's so funny because we've gamified wealth retention. Right, so I don't want to drop from number 20 on the Forbes list to number 80 by giving away $10 billion. So we need a countervailing force, right? So, I've been...
Should be like number one donor list. Who donated the most.
Impact list, right?
Yeah, impact list.
And so I've gotten to know Tony Robbins very well. We're super close friends, written together, started a number of companies together. And like Tony's really, extraordinarily philanthropic and has committed to feeding 1 billion people, right? And he's like at 700 million on his way there.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And so that, we funded so XPRIZE right now, we've launched over $300 million of prizes, and those drive typically 10 to 20 times, so 3 to 6 billion of expenditures by the teams trying to win the prize. We got a prize that Tony and the government of Abu Dhabi funded called Feeding the Next Billion, which is really around stem cell grown meats, right? Lab grown meats. So where you can take a stem cell from a cow, a chicken, a tuna, whatever, and grow the final product without having to knock down more rainforests or
create more schools of fish and all those things. Who would you say are a few of the most brilliant people you've worked with in terms of the Elons, the Bezos of the world, and what would you say are the greatest lessons that they've taught you? A few, obviously there's so many, you probably can't name them all, but a few that you were...
So Ray Kurzweil, who is my co-founder for Singularity University, really helped me understand and embody an exponential mindset, right? And just the power of exponential technologies to take on the world's biggest problems. A guy named Gerard K. O'Neill, who's passed, he was a professor at Princeton, was a mentor for me, helped me understand how do you open the space frontier. Elon, I remember I was interviewing him on the stage at Goldman Sachs about some of this stuff, and he was like, yeah, my friends tell me what's great, my best friends tell me what's wrong, right? And just the importance of critical thinking. And then first principle thinking, the idea of looking at the fundamentals and what is possible from first principle physics. Because there's a lot of wishful thinking out there, but if you can boil it down in that regard. Martine Rothblatt, who's incredible, she runs United Therapeutics. It's a $10 billion company she started. Her audacity, her daughter, and all these people are heroes in our book, Life Force, Martine is. She started Sirius and XM radio as when she was a he, undergoes sex change operations, but then later on discovers her daughter, Genesis, has a rare and fatal lung disease. Quits, liquidates her capital, starts with a high school textbook to learn biology.
Come on.
Develops a cure for her daughter's disease.
No way.
Yeah, she tracked down Martine Rothblatt.
Wow.
And there's a whole chapter on her. And she had pulmonary fibrosis, and she tracks down a drug that it was an orphan drug that was never developed by one of these particular pharma companies, gets some white powder in a baggie, and takes it into the lab with the world's experts and starts developing it. And that drug is now a multi-billion-dollar blockbuster drug for this particular disease, but then realizes the drug's not going to cure her daughter, and so she needs to create a supply of replacement lungs. And so starts on 3 different, so it's an incredible story.
Wow.
And now Martine she's a helicopter pilot and also and she's funded one of the top flying car companies, the electric vertical takeoff or landing, called Beta. And she wants to use the Beta eVTOLs for delivering organs to hospitals for transplant from our facility.
This is
right. So like
crazy.
moonshot number 8. Yeah, crazy stuff.
Wow, I'm surprised I haven't heard about this.
And so, Martine has taught me, never, ever, 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 ever give up. Her comment is every no is one step closer to yes, right?
Wow, and how's your daughter now?
Great.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is fascinating, but it goes back to your idea of massive transformational purpose.
Yeah.
And people figuring out what that is, which will drive their decisions every day towards something meaningful to them.
Yeah, one of the lessons Martine has tried to teach me that I haven't fully gotten is how to say no to things, right? And so I'm
To focus more.
To focus.
Because you're everywhere.
It's like that's my biggest challenge is really focusing in, and so it's something I try. I remember once Elon was on my board of trustees of XPRIZE along with Larry Page and a bunch of other amazing people, and I got a call from Elon saying, "Listen, I'm sorry, I'm stepping off of every board other than Tesla and SpaceX." This was, I don't know, a decade ago, and that was what he needed to do to get those
He blew it up, yeah.
And now, of course...
Now he's everywhere, or what?
Now he's every place. It's Neuralink and Boring Corporation, Twitter.
Yes. But there's probably a period of time where each person needs to focus their efforts and not dilute their efforts so they can get bigger results.
Yeah, I think I'm there. Anyway.
You start saying notice.
Start to say, really. It's really...
Only have 50 things on your plate, not 1,000.
Well, it's understanding what is your MTP and what aligns with it, and just...
Going all in on it.
Focusing in on those, because if you get those to the next level, then they enable everything else. Right?
If you could only work on 2 businesses or 2 ideas that you have right now for
we'll talk about that in our next podcast.
Afterwards, you don't want to upset all the entrepreneurs you're working with. Yeah, I get you. What is missing inside of you to take your mindset to the next level? That area of focus. I mean, I really goes back to that. I think the biggest thing I need to do is to focus. I'm also part of that is I'm a people pleaser in that regard. Yeah,
I was doing
most of my life. Yeah, it's tough,
and it's tough. So I was on stage with Eric Schmidt 2 weeks ago. Past chairman of Google and Alphabet, and we're having a fireside chat during my Abundance 360 program, and I said, "You've known a lot of incredible leaders out there." And I asked the question, do you have to be an asshole to be successful at a global level and in the multi-billionaire class? Not that he is, or Larry or Sergey aren't, but there's a number of people, and I won't go into it, that just don't give a shit what anybody else thinks. And so the question is, do you need to be that callous, or if you're playing at that level where you've got tens of billions of dollars and you're a captain of industry? I mean, what happens is you get successful enough, you start surrounding yourself with people to protect you.
Right. And they become cows for you.
They become
they say no to you.
The no
for everyone else.
Yeah.
What's the biggest lessons you've learned from Elon just in the last couple of years with everything he's been creating in terms of leadership style, in terms of investment style, in terms of strategy, in terms of his communication style and social media?
So it's interesting, right? So I had this conversation with him last April when we were launching this $100 million gigaton carbon, where we spent the day together and we did a couple-hour fireside chat talking about stuff. And he was showing me, he was tweeting out about our fireside coming out. And he was like, I'm only sending out tweets that are either funny or have information that is useful to the individual. I'm not gonna, I don't use Twitter for marketing or anything like that. Now, whether or not he's actually held to that is a different story, but that was definitely his belief in that regard. And just the audacity and his focus. The guy, we all work hard, but when it comes down to it, I was backstage with him. He funded a prize called, it was a Global Literacy XPRIZE, what we called it. And we had the winners. You had to build a piece of software that could teach a child reading, writing, and arithmetic on their own. And we're giving away a final prize, and he's backstage with me, and just super agitated. And I'm like, what up? He's like, Tesla is losing, like 100, forget what it was, $500 million this month, and it's like, we got to turn this around, and there's a SpaceX launch for the first Starlink satellite, and we're not sure if the coupling on the satellites and the frequency of the launch is going to cause it to blow up and he was just super, and he has his 5 kids there and three assistants, and it's like the level of stress, right? So, when he said publicly a few times, "You wouldn't want my life,"
right?
And I believe that to be true. He's driven. He's mentally driven.
Why do you think he's not excited about longevity as much as you are, or Tony is, or?
I had this conversation with him about when I was doing my earliest work in longevity, some years back, and he's like, I don't think people should live, forever or past, 80 or 100. And I was like, he goes, because I think people need to die to make room for new ideas. Huh. And I was like, maybe it'll change your mind when you're in your 60s or 70s. But I don't think that's true. I think a meritocracy, I think the best ideas can raise to the top. Mm-hmm. And I think that society can adopt new ideas and disrupt the General Motors of the world or the Lockheed Martins of the world. I don't think it needs to necessarily be about those leaders, those companies, moving on to the next afterlife.
Sure.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting.
What advice would you give to him if you could give him one piece of advice?
He knows all the advice he needs of focusing and slowing down.
What advice do you have to someone who is gaining power? Maybe it's someone who's now got 100,000 followers when they didn't a year ago, or millions of followers, or they're in the top 20 most powerful people in the world of your peers. What advice do you give to people with power?
I think it's, again, what's your purpose? It really comes down, the one thing that, I will go back to Elon, the thing that's guiding for him is that he will spend every penny he's got to get the human race onto Mars, right? And it's like, I'm clear about that.
Right.
No question whatsoever. He's not going to take SpaceX public because he doesn't want shareholders telling him what he can and cannot do with his rockets. So if you're seeking power, I think it's empty unless it's in service of something. So what's your fundamental objective? Is it creating, feeding everybody healthcare, energy, clean water? What are you going to use your power for? Getting power for the sake of power is empty and meaningless, and I think it makes for a very empty life.
I mean, how have you personally dealt with more wealth, more access, more power? How do you keep your mindset abundant, moonshot, exponential, but not egotistical, overpowering, me, and hurting others? How do you keep it in service to the mission and not to yourself?
I think, well, listen, my MTP, my massive transformative purpose, just to state it for the record here, is to inspire and guide entrepreneurs to create a hopeful, compelling, and abundant future for humanity.
Yeah.
So the stuff that I do, XPRIZE, Abundance 360, it's in service. How do I inspire? How do I help people find their purpose and their passion? What are the biggest problems we're going to take on? Now, there's beautiful alignment. I like to say that the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest business opportunities.
Right.
We want to become a billionaire, help a billion people. There's nothing nothing wrong with creating wealth and going big, but let's have it be in service of making the world a better place. And so I back the things that I think are making the world a better place, whether it's the venture fund or myself as an advisor. And I donate to things like the XPRIZE, First Robotics, Dean Kamen's incredible program, St. Jude's. Those are my three big areas. And, donating money is part of it, but it's donating your mind and your capabilities along with your capital that matters.
Yeah. Who's the most inspiring hero that you've never met? That's either alive now or from history.
I have been eating up some of the founding stories of America, right? So the founding fathers, for me, would have been an extraordinary group. The idea of starting a country fascinates me.
It's crazy.
Right? And so, we're going to get a shot at that as we head to the moon and Mars and such.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, but we're going to create new societal structures in the Web3 and the virtual world, and we'll have citizenship, American citizen, and a virtual citizen in these countries. But the real opportunity is when we start writing the legal code and the structure for off-world living.
That's nuts.
Yeah, but it's happening now. It's whatever we evolve into 1,000 years from now, it's these next few decades that we're going to look back in history and say it was the time that the human race moved off the planet irreversibly. So it's a magical time.
What if you could ask one question of the founding fathers, and if you could also just share with them one thing that's happened since then that you would get to share with them?
I'm fascinated by their wisdom. Did they really understand the implications of what they were doing? And then I would have told them about where communications are going. We have a representative democracy, not an actual democracy, because we never had the ability to ask people and get the world to vote or America to vote. And I would have probably said, you need to create some mechanism by which laws are sunsetted because the world of change is coming so fast, right? And we have all these laws in the books that might have been logical at the time, but it's too hard.
Yeah, it's evolving. It's inspiring stuff. I always love getting to have conversations with you. I want people to follow your mindset bootcamp. Yeah. If they go to your website, Diamandis.com.
Diamandis.com/mindset.
Right? It's a newsletter, 30-day newsletter, which teaches you this kind of bootcamp.
Yeah, it basically, it's free. It's just, I'm trying to get as many people to light up and see the world in a different way, because you can't unsee it.
Right.
And then, just at Peter Diamandis on Twitter and Instagram.
And the book.
The book Life Force.
Powerful book.
It's
game changer.
Yeah, it has the potential to add significant years on your life. And if you want to replace CNN with some constructive news, you can go to futureloop.com and longevityinsider.org. And those are free as well. And it's just my way of showing people where the world is and where it's going, because it's pretty extraordinary.
Futureloop.com, yeah. I asked you this question last time. I'm not sure if you remember it. We'll see if the answers are the same or different. It's called the 3 truths.
Okay.
So imagine you live 200, 300, 500 years as long as you want, but eventually you got to turn the lights off and leave.
Yes.
Your body and this planet and the next planets or wherever you pass away. And for whatever reason, everything you've created has to go with you or goes to another planet. Right. And no one has access to, right? It's lost in outer space. But you get to leave behind 3 lessons to the world, 3 things you know to be true from your experiences here. and this is all we would have to remember you by, your wisdom by, what would those 3 truths be?
Love is the most powerful force in the universe. Just a fundamental glue. Find your purpose in life and live your purpose in life. That is the most important thing. And just ultimately be a good person. What did I say last time?
Well, if people want to hear that, they'll have to go to the previous interview and check it out, because one of the 3 were the same.
All right.
So if they want to know the other 2, go check that out.
Maybe you'll tell me.
I'll tell you afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah. Before I ask the final question, Peter, I want to acknowledge you for your audacity to continue to dream so big.
Thank you. Yeah.
I just feel like we need more models like you, people that think in a certain way, people that act and take big actions towards things to serve humanity in a better way. So I'm really inspired by your mission. I'm really inspired by your level of service.
Thank you.
And I'm excited to try some of these things out. I think it was the fountainlife.com.
Fountain Life, yes.
I want to continue to improve my life. So I'm just inspired. It's really cool what you've created as a model for so many people in the world, entrepreneurs like myself. So I appreciate your mission and the model you've created. Final question for you. What's your definition of greatness?
Knowing that you have done all that you can and that you're operating at your highest level. It's like, I think that for me is because being as great as you can. At the end of the day, if I know I've left nothing on the field, that's it.
There you go, Peter. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
A pleasure, pal.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed that interview, then I know you'll love what we have coming up right now. Can you be creative from a place of fear and terror?
No, you're restrictive. You're scarcity minded. You're not creative and expansive, and you're looking to protect what you have versus create something new. And so a lot of my work at the XPRIZE, in Abundance 360, at Singularity University, in my books are around helping people see the world a different way, right? We're living arguably during one of the most extraordinary times in human history. Today, an individual is more powerful than presidents were a few decades back, more than the kings and the queens. We have access to more knowledge, energy, capital, computational power. People don't honestly know how powerful they are to make their dreams come true, to transform the world, to find a problem and solve a problem, right? So I'm with the entrepreneurs that I support. I say, listen, stop complaining and start solving.
Go find a solution.
Go find a solution, because the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest business opportunities.
That's true.
Right? And I teach this throughout my programs. Want to become a billionaire, help a billion people. Right? This beautiful convergence that we're so powerful and we can solve these problems. Not everything, but I think a good number of them.
Yeah. Now, isn't every generation or decade going to be the best time in the world moving forward? Like 50 years from now, we're going to say this is the greatest time in history because we have this technology, right?
Right. So that's what my first book, my first collaboration with Stephen Kotler, a dear friend for both of us, was about. I wrote a book called Abundance: The Future is Better Than You Think, right? And it shows us that for all of human history, the world has been getting better. If you measure the world by access to food, water, shelter, healthcare, education, knowledge, information, entertainment, all of these factors. Of course, there are issues around the environment, there are issues around all kinds of things, but we forget how much life was about survival, right? Fundamental survival. In the holiday season, we think about gratitude and Thanksgiving and
Giving and abundance of gifts. There wasn't that.
It was like I was, a millennia ago, it's like, can I live till tomorrow?
Isn't that crazy?
Right? Can I find food? My son or daughter are sick. What's going on? Can I get the right, medicine man to help me, figure this out? We worry about, oh man, it's like I got to cut the grass, or I've got to I don't have enough time to see my soap opera, or the stuff that we're worried about today. We finally have the chance to take a break, a vacation from survival, and now we can think at a much higher level of how do I want to contribute? How do I make the world a better place?
Yeah.
And that's an amazing place to be.
Now, was there ever a time in history that was actually better, that they had abundance mindset? I don't know, I'm thinking of like the Egyptians and the pyramids, like we've never figured out how they did those things. Like, was there ever a period of time that was like, man, it was glorious time?
I think we will romanticize the past, but for almost all of human history, the way I describe human history, it was the king and the queen on the hilltop, or the pharaoh, whatever you want, and the rest of 99.99% of people in absolute squalor, working to try and make the king and the queen somewhat wealthy. But even if you think about it, the life of that king or queen 500 years ago doesn't compare to the poorest people here in LA, right? Who still have a cell phone, still have air conditioning, still have access to an Uber, have access to all of these things, and a bathroom. I mean, the things that we take for granted now that would be miraculous, just decades ago or hundreds of years ago, and so people think about, my God, we've got an increasing wealth gap. Yeah. We do, but on a different way to think about it. Again, for all of human history, it was the have and the have-nots, right?
Lots of have-nots.
99.999%, and the few haves at the top of the hilltop in the castle, so to speak. And where we're moving to now is a world with a few haves and all these have-nots. To the work that I'm focused on is creating a world of haves, and yes, there will be super haves. Mm-hmm. But if we can create a world where every man, woman, and child has access to their basic needs, food, water, shelter, healthcare, education, all of these things, because we're dematerializing, demonetizing, and democratizing these things, right? And I'll come back to that. Yes, there will be those multi-billionaires living forever on Mars, but I'd rather have that world where we uplift, where every mother knows that her kid has access to all the health they need, all the education they need, the water, the food, the energy, and they can create. They're living not a world of luxury, but a world of possibility.
Yeah. What is it that you think that limits us from thinking bigger? I feel like you're one of the leaders who think so much bigger than people's wildest dreams. Why are people limited in the way they think about what's possible for them?
That's a great question. And I think it is fundamentally a person's mindset. They don't allow themselves to think at that scale.
What holds us back from allowing, even fantasizing for a moment of a big dream?
And I think it's really ultimately giving yourself that permission and allowing and getting the tools you need and getting examples in your life of other people who have. It's safer not to dream big, because to dream big is very risky. It's risky because people, A, will think you're crazy, or B, will hold you to your moonshots and then criticize you when you fail. And I think, but we're living in a very different age where your ability to have a vision of something significant and big, and this is what my second book, Bold, was about, how to go big, create wealth, and impact the world, was saying, listen, we're living in a time right now where you can have a big idea and you can test and iterate very rapidly until you find the right product market fit. And things can scale. We're going from I've got an idea to I run $1 billion company fashion anytime in human history. There are more unicorns than ever before because there's more capital than ever before. And entrepreneurs can come up with an idea and test it quickly. And fail it quickly, or iterate different versions of it quickly. And that's an amazing time. And so it's never been better to be an entrepreneur. And I talk about this in all the work I do when I'm working with people. I say, first and foremost, it's critically important for you to get clarity on what I call your massively transformative purpose. What are you on this planet to do? Doing anything big and bold is hard work. It's all hard work, right? Hard. We get this incredible, fantasy of what it was like to be Jeff Bezos or be Elon Musk or be, Zuckerberg, all these guys. And the fact of the matter is, we think it's easy. We think it's like start at idea and go straight to $1 billion valuation, but it's not. There are incredibly difficult times along the road, right? There's this period of launch your idea and then on the death of, the doorstep of death over and over and over again,
Right.
and not giving up. I joke that a lot of my most successful ventures are overnight successes after 11 years of hard work.
Yeah.
Right? I know Elon well, and looking at what he did with Tesla and with SpaceX is extraordinary, but it was hard.
It's still hard.
It's still hard, and it was on. He tells the stories of being on the brink of bankruptcy, on the brink of running out of capital, and it was his sheer fortitude. Right, the team at Airbnb. I mean, they iterated their idea hundreds of times to get something that works, and so. But it's possible now, as an entrepreneur, where before you would. Failure was a death knell. Today, it's experience.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to fail multiple times in order to have the credibility, the experience to grow. How many times? Explain what a moonshot is for those who maybe don't know what it is. Define it. How many moonshots have you declared and said, "I'm doing this"?
Yeah.
How many of them actually happened or close to happening, and how many failed?
Yeah. So, fair question. So I mentioned massively transformative purpose. Let me touch
And what
on
is
that.
your
Yeah.
thing? Yeah.
So an MTP is something I work with all of my entrepreneurs and CEOs around. Get clarity around what's your purpose in life. You can have an MTP for yourself, for your family, for your company, and it needs to be something that you have an emotional connection with, that lights you up, that gets you excited. It can come from a place of absolute love. Like, I so want this to exist. I so am excited about creating this. It can come from a place of sheer pain. It can come from a place like, this should not exist on the planet. I'm going to solve this problem, right? But it has to have a kind of emotional energy. You and I both know Tony, Tony Robbins, and emotion is a fundamental driver for human greatness.
Yeah.
And so getting that MTP, right? So I've had 3 over my life, one meta,
And they can
change.
they can evolve.
They can evolve.
Yeah.
They can change over time. You can have one for a year, for 5 years, and find something else you connect with. Early on, it was making the Earth a multiplanetary species, the humanity a multiplanetary species. How do I open up space, right? Because I grew up on Apollo and Star Trek, right? Apollo showed us what was possible. Star Trek showed us where the world was going.
Right.
And that lit me alive, that drove me, and that is really, and I've started a dozen space companies over the years, really to make those happen. My next one was solving the world's grand challenges, and that gave birth to the XPRIZE and Singularity University. How do we positively impact the lives of 1 billion people? Because that's now possible. As an entrepreneur, I don't care where you live, you're connected to the global economy by the web, massive capabilities, access to capital on crowdfunding and venture funding and all of this. An individual has the potential, if they desire, to impact the lives of 1 billion people on the planet.
Yeah.
That's the first time ever that we live in that world.
Yeah, because we have scale now with our resources,
Massive
with
scale.
our reach, with distribution,
Right.
everything. Yeah.
And so one can set that goal. So
that's a goal of yours as well?
So my second MTP, and I sort of maintained the first and built on the second, was using technology to impact the world's grand challenges, and that gave birth to the XPRIZE, where we've launched about $200 million in prizes.
Crazy.
Another $200 million are in development for solving some of the world's biggest grand challenges. And when a team competes for an XPRIZE, they actually have to do it. They have to build it and demonstrate it, and then they get they get the money from the prize, but they keep the IP, and their goal is to develop and build this business.
Expand it, yeah.
And then Singularity University, which I co-founded with Ray Kurzweil, is really around helping entrepreneurs get access to exponential technologies, computation, sensors, AI, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology, augmented virtual reality, blockchain, quantum computing. All of these technologies are openly available if you want to use them, can apply them, but these are all technologies that allow us to make our impact, scale, to a millionfold, a billionfold.
Right.
And my latest area, MTP, has been around extending the healthy human lifespan. So
Longevity.
Longevity of of a healthy longevity. How
Not
do
just
you,
like suffering, but living forever.
yeah,
But
it's how do you, and so I said a very simple first moonshot within that area. So I think about an MTP as the canvas you want to paint on. Like, this is the area I want to have an impact on. And a moonshot is a very specific goal on that canvas. So in the near term, I'm focused on how do I add 30.
So for
yeah.
example, you want to impact 1 billion lives in a positive way. Is the overall
Could be the overall canvas, your
canvas,
MTP, right?
But then the moonshot is
It's very
longevity.
specific. So a moonshot is very specific. It's like numbers. It's like within 10 years, I want to do this thing to these many people and make this impact. So
That's great.
in the longevity space, I'm focused on how do I add 30 healthy years, so that we have the aesthetics, we look good, the cognition, we're thinking clearly, and the mobility, we're moving clearly. We have strength in our movement at 100 that you had like at 60, right? So how do you make 100 years old when you're 60? And so I spend a lot of time as an entrepreneur investing in that area, building companies in that area. Tony Robbins and I are writing our next book called called Life Force, on that topic. That'll come out in 2021. And because it's possible. The breakthroughs that are coming out right now that are in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials are extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I think we're really going to create a bump up in healthy
lifespan.
In lifespan. So it's really about health span, right? How do you remain healthy and vibrant? No one wants to live in a wheelchair, with depends.
What do you think that we could get to with the technology and resources we have right now? What can someone who's alive right now get to?
Yeah, I think that what's coming,
a healthy.
Yeah, I think this decade, right, 2020 through 2030, that we're going to see a minimum of a 10-year addition to our lifespan. I think we can probably get 20, and I'm shooting for 30.
Wow.
But here's what's so important for people to realize, that we're living in a period of rapid exponential growth, where all of these technologies are doubling in power every 18 to 24 months. What we're seeing in AI, combined with quantum computing, combined with CRISPR and gene therapy and genome sequencing and all of these things, I think are going to enable us to understand aging as a disease, not as an inevitability.
Really?
Yeah. So that's.
So we've all had a disease our entire life.
Well, so here's a question, right? When I was in medical school, I was doing a joint MD PhD program. I ended up, after the medical degree, I stopped the PhD and just got a master's because I was like, no one's going to call me doctor. So, I remember watching this TV show on long-lived sea life, that on Earth, certain species of sharks and whales and turtles can live 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 700 years.
No way.
Yeah, and
really?
So the question,
Wow.
like the Greenland shark, has a 500-year lifespan.
What?
Yeah, and
How do they even track that?
they have by looking at sharks that have harpoons still in them that were from you can carbon date back 400 years back.
Holy cow!
Stuff like that. Yeah,
That's crazy.
it is crazy. But at the end, why can they and why can't we? And I remember thinking, it's either a hardware problem or a software problem. And we're beginning to understand that. There's an amazing book by a friend, Dr. David Sinclair at Harvard, who runs the Longevity Institute there. The book just came out called Lifespan. I commend it to everybody. And he talks about the information aging theory, theory of aging. And he believes, and he's brilliant, that we're entering a time where not only can we slow aging or stop aging, that the technology potentially exists to reverse aging.
Wow.
And
completely. To
well,
like live hundreds of years.
So here's my mission.
Forever.
My mission, and that for all of us, should be to live as long a healthy life as we can. And as we do that, we will intercept more and more treatments and technology. The world is not standing still, right? So it's still, honestly, when people say, well, what should I do? My answers are still sleep.
Yeah.
Eat
healthy.
You need 7 at least. I target 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
As much as I've gotten to the point where I respect sleep more than ever. There's another book called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. Beautiful book. and the importance of sleep. Human nature or nature would have evolved sleep away if it was possible, right? If a human species could live on less sleep, you'd be more productive.
Yeah.
Believe me, it's necessary. So sleep, eating right, and for me, that's a vegan diet, right? So
How long have you been vegan for?
About 3 years thereabouts,
wow.
and I think the evidence is damn strong. And listen, it's not religious for me. I'll have some scrambled eggs or a piece of fish once in a while, but the third is exercise for sure, and then the fourth is mindset. If you're excited about being alive, then you're going to live a life of purpose and meaning and contribution.
And build healthy relationships and have community,
and community is so critically important.
Yeah.
So all these things, on top of those are what you need to do today. On top of those, there are a multitude of amazing pharmaceutical, biotech technologies.
Stem cells and
stem cells, with pathway manipulation, senolytic medicines, a whole slew of things that are in different stages of clinical trials.
Are you trying some of these yourself, or
some? But at the end, I think these are going to come online over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years. So like I tell my friends, it's critically important for you to stay healthy, right? Don't die from something stupid over the next 10 years so you can intercept these capabilities.
Really?
Yeah, so...
And it'll probably start off extremely expensive, and then it'll be affordable for the masses.
Like every technology is, right? The first cell phones cost $1 million and worked really shitty, right? And then now they're $40 and they work amazing, and everybody on the planet's got one.
Yeah.
And that's the normal process of technology. And so my MTPs have been opening up the space frontier, positively impacting 1 billion people, and so, AKA solving the world's grand challenges, and now extending the healthy human lifespan. And those become sort of what I think about, what I'm passionate about, and where I start my companies, make my investments, and where I write about. And a lot of those are in my next book, The Future is Faster Than You Think, because that's what I pay attention to. I spend my world and my life tracking the amazing tech developments and what do those mean across every industry. What do those mean for us as parents, as entrepreneurs, as humans?
And how does one start to, because a lot of people will come to me and say, how do I discover my passion? How do I know what my mission is? What's the process? You said there's something from a pain or something from a love. But
So
is there
a
creative process for people to do that, whether they've had it once and now they lost their mission, they're looking for something new?
So I've got a community called my Abundance Digital Community. It's a community of entrepreneurs that I coach every day, every week. And so I work with them on finding their MTP. And some of the tricks is to say, listen, what did you want to do when you were a kid? Before the world, your teachers, your parents told you couldn't do. Because you can make a career out of anything. And what do you bring this childlike amazement to the world, right? So you're like on fire, you're a kid, I love this, right? It's like I love my life, I truly do, in so many different dimensions because I'm playing all the time, right? So that's the first thing I'll chat with my entrepreneurs around. The second thing is, if I were to give you $1 billion and said, listen, I want you to make the world a better place. You've got $1 billion to spend. You can't spend it on yourself, nothing frivolous, make the world a better place. What would you do with it? And you can educate, you can help, different groups around the world, you can make people healthier, you can stop poaching, whatever it is, right? What areas light you up? And third, who do you want to be a hero to? Right? Who do you want, who do you want to be a hero to? Who do you want to make proud of you? Is it entrepreneurs? Is it young women? Is it old people? Is it your heritage? What is that? And so these are questions that one can ask to get some reflection. And then I'm saying, okay, within those questions, find something that is an experiment. Write down a massively transformative purpose, right? So my overall MTP that I will say to myself every day in the shower, every morning, or in 2 or 3 times a day, right? I will say, listen, I see, hear, feel, and know that the purpose of my life is to inspire and guide the transformation of humanity on and off the earth, right? So I am about inspiring people.
I like that.
And guiding people. Wow. We're going to create a transformation of the human race, where we are in the midst of this massive transformation as exponential technologies are accelerating. And we're going to be creating this transformation on and off the earth. And my mission is inspiring and guiding entrepreneurs to make the world a better place, right? I think entrepreneurs, leaders are all about finding and solving problems. And the more entrepreneurs finding problems, solving problems, the more problems get solved, the world gets better. So find an MTP statement that you can write down, memorize, inspire and guide the transformation of humanity on and off the earth. The off the earth plays to the 9-year-old kid in me, right? Because that's
your dream.
That's my dream. And so inspiring and guiding is what I love to do on the stage, in the world, wherever it might be. And then try out your MTP, share it with your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, kids, whatever it is, to the people that you're most embarrassed to share it with, and see how it feels in your heart, right? You have to be able to say it proudly, consistently, without reservation, and because it then becomes guiding you as to where you go, what you do or don't do. It becomes a clear, bright line about this is inside of it, this is not. Anyway, that's
wow. Have you ever doubted yourself?
Of course. I think.
And when do you have those moments of doubt?
So I am. The bigger you go, the greater your moonshots, the more the doubt mounts. And at the end, you have to accept that failure is an option. Otherwise, you're stuck in incrementalism, right? I teach this, and I say, listen, the day before something is truly a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea, right? So if you're trying to create something and it's not a crazy idea for most everybody else, it's not going to be a breakthrough. It'll be an expected small incremental improvement. Like if people say, yeah, sure, of course. You can increase your sales by 10% or 20%. I think you can work harder. You can do the right thing. But if I said, listen, I'm going to 10x I'm going to go increase by 1,000%, or I'm going to create something, it's like that's a crazy notion. And in order for you to really drive a breakthrough, you have to be willing to step over the line into crazy and not know how you're going to get there.
Wow.
Right?
How do we figure out the knowing?
So I think ultimately you have to get to a point of, is it impossible? Meaning, am I disobeying the laws of physics here, right?
Right.
Is there some evidence to show that this is possible? It doesn't have to be direct evidence, but someone else in a different area has done something of the same scale, or there's some analogy, right? There's something to say that this is possible. I don't know how to get there. I'm not 100% sure I can, but the fact that these things have done something similar gives me the belief that I can. There's a fundamental belief, and now I just have to figure it out, right? So in Bold, I tell the stories for Richard Branson and Larry Page and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, and look at sort of billionaire thinking at scale. And it's from a fundamental perspective. Each of them have their own leap of faith, right? And it's kind of crazy, and yet you create the future, right? I have a whole set of Peter's laws, and one of them is the best way to predict the future is create it yourself, right? And we create the future all the time, but it's hard.
It's really hard.
It's friggin' hard.
Everyone's against you except for maybe a few people, right?
And it's like, and the chances of success are potentially low. And so it has to be something you're sufficiently willing to pursue. The energy has to be there, right? So a few of my ventures, like Zero Gravity Corporation, which we used parabolic flights to fly Stephen Hawking and so many people, and the XPRIZE Foundation, I mean, they were decadal-long problems, and the companies crashed and burned, dozens of times. There were hundreds of no's.
Wow.
But it's like my energy. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning, looking literally myself in the mirror and saying, I refuse to give up.
Wow.
And that kind of energy is what it takes to keep going.
But we're talking about one day being able to reverse the age of the body by 50, 75%. We do that in mice now. We can cure old age, blindness, and this kind of stuff. But importantly, what can we do now to stay alive till those technologies come online 5, 10 years from now? I believe that when you eat is just as important as what you eat.